Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 2026 election hustings for the St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter Deputies. I'm Cathy Keir, and I'm taking us through the proceedings this evening. We've got until 9 o'clock, so I hope you've all got plenty of questions up your sleeves for the candidates. And thank you for coming out in this heat. It's not awfully cool in here, is it? Before we start, a bit of housekeeping. Can you please make sure your phones are on airplane mode so they don't interfere with the tech? We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if you hear one, there are plenty of exits. We've got some doors open to try and bring in some air, so you should be able to get out nice and quickly. The event's being live streamed on YouTube. If you're joining us online, you can access live captions if you press the button at the bottom of the screen. And for anybody you know that couldn't make it tonight, just let them know it'll be online from later on this evening so people can catch up. So you can vote for up to 3 of tonight's 6 candidates, and they are, in order of seating: Chris Rebendane, Independent; David Benn, Independent; Arlene Maltman, Independent; Helen Evans, Reform Jersey; Russell Labby, Independent; and Lucy Stevenson, Independent. The candidates have decided that they'll each make an opening speech lasting up to 4 minutes, and then they've allocated 2 minutes to answer each of your questions, 2 at a time. So that's 2 questions in 2 minutes. And they'll take it in turns to be the first to answer your questions. So let's kick off with the speeches. First, Chris Rebendane.
Thank you for coming out on such a warm evening to hear why I want to represent you in the States Assembly and what I can bring to the role. This district matters deeply to me. My family have had homes in St Mary for 44 years now, and I spent 3 very happy years living across the road from the Lefevre's dairy farm in St Peter. This is where I feel most at home. I spent 40 years in the finance industry, professionally qualified and working at a senior level, both in Jersey and overseas. I then moved into public service, spending 5 years working for the Attorney General in the Economic Crime Unit. I understand the importance of the finance industry in Jersey, and just as importantly, I understand what it faces in terms of today's global environment. Last week I heard an interview with an economic commentator, Jim O'Neill, who has advised governments on national regeneration projects. He said something simple but profound. He said governments can only control 3 things: how much they spend, how much they borrow, and how much they tax. In Jersey today, we spend too much, we borrow too much, and we tax too much. And that needs to change. And it needs to change now. I want to take that message on your behalf to the Assembly and use my vote to represent you when others want to spend more, to borrow more, or to tax more. The cost of living crisis will not ease until government finances return to a surplus and the tax burden falls below 20% for the majority of taxpayers. Government must commit to 4 years of disciplined spending reduction, and it must start now. My plan to re-energise a healthy Jersey rests on 4 pillars. Healthy finances. So government must live within its means, reduce unnecessary expenditure, and focus on doing less but doing it better. The hospital project is a great example, although thankfully the health minister appears to be getting it back on track now. A healthy economy. Jersey needs fewer regulations, not more. Tourism requires genuine investment and proper connectivity. We should be engaging our local industry experts to work on how we revive our visitor economy. Healthy land and water. Agriculture and fisheries must continue to be revitalised. The island plan needs simplifying, and the DFDS contract must be resolved so freight and passenger services are reliable again. And finally, a healthy population. We must build the acute hospital without further delay. Children's health needs urgent attention, with obesity levels now above UK averages. Sport and outdoor activity must be accessible to all islanders. While canvassing, I expected to hear concerns about housing, roadworks, water quality, and a hotel. And of course I did. I could say more now, but I think they'll probably come up in the Q&A. I'm not just about money, but without sound finances, the things we truly need become unaffordable. Government must focus on delivering core services cost effectively. At election time, candidates often say yes to everything. But the words you should want to hear are, this is how it will be funded. because that shows seriousness and a clear understanding that your candidate hears your concerns about overspending. So we will not spend £120 million of taxpayers' money on Fort Regent on my watch. We should not have spent months of disruption and vast cost for a bus lane on the Esplanade to shave a couple of minutes off a bus journey. We should not be plundering the Social Security Fund. We are Jersey, small, resourceful, prudent. We must regain that spirit. Please give me one of your votes on the 7th of June. Thank you.
Thank you. David Benn.
Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight in this tremendous heat. I am standing with the same enthusiasm and energy as I had 4 years ago when I was so very nearly elected. Brought up in St. Ouen, I now live in St. Peter, and part of my farm was in St. Mary, so I have a very strong bond with this constituency. I was chairman of the Jersey Farmers Union Potato Committee and chaired many subcommittees, and I was a director of the Jersey Producers and Merchants Organisation, and I strongly represented that industry. I served in both St. Ouen and St. John Honorary Police, and I'm a trustee of the charity Mustard Seed. I'm also a board member of the Société Générale and also the Jersey National Park, much of which is in these three parishes, of course. We need to do better for this and future generations. Government spending is far too high and the workforce is too big. Only by long-term planning and clear decision-making can we reverse this trend and prevent future generations from being left with debt and insurmountable problems. While backing the finance sector, we must see our tourism industry enhanced, as it has so many add-on benefits, as well as continued strong support for our farming sector. Essentially, we must reinvigorate our economy by actively seeking and supporting new opportunities for business with near and far neighbours. AI is impacting and will replace jobs in finance and other sectors. By enhancing Highlands, embracing AI, people can retrain and our young can learn the new skills and apprenticeships, fulfilling new opportunities created by entrepreneurs who can be aided by reducing red tape and faster planning. By doing this, we can retain more of our young people on island. We must reduce the cost of living by increasing the tax threshold, reducing fuel duty, harbour dues and freight costs, increasing childcare provision, encouraging local food production and ensuring that income support is appropriate. Looking to the future, we must ensure our energy security and our food security, as this is almost non-existent. We must increase the housing stock for our young families by using new techniques that reduce heating and electricity costs significantly and help them to buy their homes. Our environment is a great asset. It is essential to preserve all good agricultural land for its intended purpose and prioritise reducing PFAS levels in our water. We have great frontline services, and we must increase this in some areas, for example, mental health and autoimmune care. With the increasing age of our population, we must encourage both physical and mental health to prevent a serious imbalance which is looming in the very near future. Through supporting sports, physical recreation, community and culture, we can increase well-being, promoting good health as we age, thereby reducing the cost of care while increasing the quality of our lives. We must continue and perhaps increase our support for the charities that enhance the care of those in need, as well as treating in-family carers with far greater respect. We live in a wonderful island with incredibly diverse and multi-talented population. Let's work together and collaboratively for a bright, healthy and prosperous future. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlene Maltman.
Thank you all for coming out this evening in this heat. It's really great to see so many of you and to see so many that I've seen on the doorstep. I grew up in the northwestern parishes. I currently live in St. Ouen. West is best, as they say. I've had a career in marketing and communications, but many people know me for my surfing achievements, which began in the parish in St Owen's Bay. I now sit on the GB Olympic Surfing Board, which supports elite athletes and grassroots surfing here in Jersey. The clear issue of this election is the cost of living crisis we are facing. We're all feeling it. And Caritas, I think Patrick's here, has spoken widely about the 650 families that use food banks every week. And this simply is not acceptable. This new government must be made up of candidates who are willing to tackle this. It's my key belief that we must make food more affordable. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. And I want to see the cost brought down by the removal or reduction of GST. I also support a review of fuel duty and the proposed review of the flat rate freight cost. Now, St Peter's is a beautiful parish, and with its rural economy still at its heart, but it's seen much urbanisation in recent years. And so the next island plan will be one of the biggest political decisions for the rural parishes. We must make sure it protects and serves to enhance our sense of community in the parish. It will determine how we protect our coastline and our environment and where homes will be built. This will need a strong voice in the Assembly, and I commit to consulting with parishioners so that your voice is heard. With the rural economic framework in place, we've seen a real buzz in the farming sector in recent years, and I want to support and encourage this. And I want to help local growers get their food into our shops and onto our plates. Smaller farmers tell me the main challenges come from addressing the volume and logistics issues. My idea is to create a local food hub that brings smaller growers together and manages many of these issues. The planning system is another factor contributing to the high cost of doing business and living in Jersey. I support a simpler planning system that makes it cheaper and easier for applicants to make changes. And in the parish where affordable living is a concern for many, we must make it easier for families who want to create multi-generational living arrangements in their properties. St Peter has carried a heavy burden of PFAS. Residents have had to fight for answers, and so we need an independent scrutiny and a government committed to reducing the levels in our water. I'm standing to protect what is important about our parish life, and that includes improving connectivity. The number 10 route is a welcome step, but a bus every 2 hours is not enough. I want to see a hopper bus introduced, connecting the 3 parishes with local amenities to the beaches and to the Enid Keno Centre. I welcome new homes in the parish, but talking to parishioners...
Time to draw it to a close, Ali.
Thank you. We'll talk about the new homes in the parish, and I just want to skip to the fact that I've worked in the Cabinet Office as a press officer, and this has given me a very broad insight into how government works. And for me, communication is the key, and I would support more robust communication for parishioners so that you are kept informed and your voice is heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Helen Evans.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming out this evening on this very hot evening. My name is Helen Evans, and as I'm sure you know, I am standing, as I did 4 years ago, and came quite close to getting in, as a Reform Jersey candidate for Deputy of St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter. So I'll begin by telling you a little bit about myself and my background and why I believe I have the skills to be an effective states member representing you, the people of this parish where I grew up and where I have lived since I returned to Jersey in 2018. I've had a varied career. I started out as a secondary school teacher. I taught mathematics in secondary schools in Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire. I then made a career change into accountancy, and I trained as an accountant at the United Kingdom National Audit Office, which is sometimes described as the public sector watchdog and is the body which audits all central government accounts and also does a range of value for money and consultancy work for the UK public sector. So that gave me quite wide-ranging exposure to the management of public money within a UK government context, including experience of such things as large capital projects and procurement. I then worked for an accountancy firm in London where I did international grant audit, working mainly on UN and EU funded projects worldwide, which again gave me exposure to management of public money, but also to a wide range of organisations in both the business sector and the tertiary sector. I returned to Jersey in 2018, initially to work as an accountant for Ports of Jersey, a post which I then gave up ahead of the 2022 election because I felt there was a conflict of interest as an election candidate under contract to return to a job at Ports of Jersey. Since then, I have worked nearly full-time as an associate lecturer for the university, Open University, teaching mainly mathematics and statistics on a range of degree programmes, including those in economics and data science. So as you can see, I have quite a varied background with quite a strong skill set, including excellent analytical skills in data analysis and considerable experience in managing money in the public sector. I chose to stand with Reform Jersey because I believe that the system which served us well of independent members under the committee system does not work so well under ministerial government, and that it is as a member of a political party that I can most effectively represent you. Reform Jersey has shown over the last two parliaments in particular that by working together we can achieve more than we could as independents. Over the last 2 years, as you will be aware no doubt, we have had some of our members in a coalition government with independents, others have taken roles on scrutiny. As part of the government, we have held portfolios on education, on housing, on social security, and over the last 2 years, we have been instrumental in bringing about increased subsidised childcare for 2- and 3-year-olds, the First Steps housing scheme, and a number of improvements in social security provision. We can do more in the future. We can also continue our work in scrutiny, where we hold the government to account, and we insist on propriety in the handling of public finances. So I ask that you consider giving me one of your votes on the 7th of June so that I can represent you in the States. Thank you.
Thank you. Russell Labby.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Middle Jersey is working hard and being squeezed from every side. Middle earners are not wealthy, they don't qualify for help, they're the backbone of the island, and some of them are just 1 or 2 bills away from real financial pressure. Meanwhile, the government, the size and cost of government keep growing. It can't go on, and that's why this election is so important. St. Ouen, St. Mary and St. Peter, 3 parishes thrown together as a new constituency, but 3 parishes which have a lot in common. We shop in the same places. We swim and surf in the same beautiful bays. We're inconvenienced by the same roadworks. And we share some of the most beautiful and unspoiled countryside in the island. We also share some of the greatest challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, today, 2026, the green zone, the backdrop to our lives, is under threat. Solar panels in the middle of rural St. Mary, a constant barrage of inappropriate applications for our fragile coastal national park around the St. Ouen Bay area, and not to mention PFAS, against which the brave residents of Val de la Mar and Montalabron have fought the government and highlighted the dangers for all of us of this forever chemical. These are the live issues your deputies must take on. In an assembly of 49, it's perfectly possible for a deputy to disappear. I've seen it happen. They just keep their head down, nowhere near a parapet, don't ruffle any feathers, don't rock any boats, and they can disappear. I think you know me by now, and that's not my style. I was in the States for 7.5 years. In that time, I brought 26 propositions to the floor of the Assembly. I won 20 of those. That's quite a good record to match. So now is not the time to sit quietly by and be a spectator. Now is the time to stand up and be heard. Thank you very much for coming this evening, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Lucy Stevenson.
Well, good evening, everybody. For the past 4 years, I've had the privilege of being one of your deputies in St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter. I'm an independent candidate and I live in St Ouen with my husband and our 3 children. And before entering politics, I spent 13 years at the JEP as a journalist, political correspondent and assistant editor. I was inspired to first stand for election because I wanted to see more compassion in politics and I wanted to see our government making meaningful connections with islanders, and that still inspires me today. This last political term has not been without its challenges. We've had 2 governments and a great deal of distraction and delay on some really key issues as a result of that change in leadership. But it has allowed me to learn quickly. First as an assistant minister in government, and then on the backbenches as a busy member of scrutiny. And those experiences mean that I'm ready to hit the ground running if I am re-elected, which is a good job because there's an awful lot to do. So my vision is for a community which works together at parish, constituency and island level to build a healthier, happier, more resilient population, making Jersey an even more attractive place to live, work, bring up children, invest and do business. We need to find sustainable solutions to some really big challenges which for too long have been left in the too difficult pile. And we need to carefully balance the increasing need for fiscal prudence with our responsibilities to deliver for islanders and to protect our environment for future generations. And government should be working as an enabler, creating and nurturing environments for businesses, charities and individuals to thrive. My manifesto focuses on 5 interconnected areas: a strong and vibrant economy which works for the people, the cost of living, building healthy and happy communities, future families, and long-term sustainable decision-making. I've focused on realistic, meaningful commitments which I know I can deliver regardless of what role I may end up in if I am re-elected. Key commitments include a temporary 10p per litre cut in fuel duty to mitigate soaring prices. That would cut the price of filling up a family car by around £5 a time. Increasing investment in preventative health from 2% of health spending to 6%. A birth rate task force to tackle the barriers for those who want to start or grow their families locally. Ensuring a fair deal for islanders who've achieved a full social security contribution record prior to reaching pensionable age, to ensure that they're not forced to overpay for no added benefit. And working with the 3 parish connotabs to strengthen our local communities and protect our countryside and coastline, including our iconic bays of St Owen's Bay, Greve de Lec and Plemont. It's the role of a deputy to represent the interests of constituents in the States Assembly and to work with them on individual and local issues. Good relationships with the connotabs and the parishes are absolutely vital. Future developments of homes are planned in all 3 of our parishes, and the next States Assembly is expected to be required to consider the next island plan, which will set planning policy and rezone land into the future. Our parishes collectively account for 28% of Jersey's land and significant stretches of our coastline, and therefore your representatives will have an important role in ensuring your voices are heard during that process. I'm also aware that there are significant concerns about
to wrap up.
speeding and road safety in St Peter, particularly through the village and on roads which join to it, by the parish school and in St Peter's Valley. If I am re-elected, I commit to working with the Conotab and other deputies to address these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates. Now you've heard what they've all got to say, and it's time for you to ask questions. Nikki has kindly volunteered to bring the microphone round. Please tell us your name and confirm that you are a St Peter parishioner if you do want to ask questions. Okay, I'll take you two first. You can rest your arms. And then hand the mic back to Nikki when you've asked your question. And when phrasing your question, please bear in mind that every candidate needs to be able to answer it, so no questions directed at one person, please. If we have time, I will come back to people for a second question. We won't take questions from other election candidates or current states members. And please try to keep your questions succinct and leave the speeches to the candidates. So let's get started. We have two questions over here, the two gentlemen who had their hands up. If we go to put your hands up again so Nikki can see the two that I said I would come to. That's one. Yeah, we'll take two questions and then they'll answer both those questions.
Good evening, Robert Surcouf. I've been a St Peter's parishioner all my life. I'm also chair of the Association of Jersey Charities, and all our districts and the whole island, we're suffering cost of living, as you've all pointed out, and lots of challenges. And I feel very strongly that charities have been doing a huge amount of heavy lifting and often have found certain ministers not supportive and not recognising the position. The Association of Jersey Charities has written to every single candidate asking if you would agree to their pledge for better engagement with charities, not just about more money. I'd like to know a yes or no. Yes, do you support that, or no? And if it's a yes, thank you. If it's a no, could you briefly tell me or tell us why you don't feel you want to give that support?
Okay, thank you. That's question number one. And question number two from the gentleman in the blue top.
My name is Alan Peter Holmes, and I'm going to try and keep this as tight as I can. I'm passionate about the lack of traffic control that we have in St Peter. I've tried for over 20 years to get safe traffic control in this island. 2 files full of letters that I've written. I've lodged a 15-page document with our parish authorities here. I'm a qualified driving instructor, and I've shown where we need proper zebra crossings.
And do you have a question for the
Yes.
candidates?
Most of the people here know nothing about this, but I've sent what's in those files to every single one of the deputies behind this thing. So I'd just like them to comment on what I've sent them in that letter.
And is there a specific question you'd like them to answer?
Yeah, I want to see proper, safe traffic control. I want the traffic slowed down.
That's still not a question.
What more can I say?
Okay, right. So those two questions, and first person to answer will be Chris. What the second person? What was your first name? Alan. Okay, Chris.
Good evening, Robert. I'm pretty certain I have committed to it. I'll go and check when I get home. But more to the point, the principle. I believe that the charity sector is pulling a lot of heavy weight. The whole jet incident, I think, brought that to everyone's attention. And I'm very pleased that that got resolved in a positive way. I've talked to some of the people there, and they're much reassured by probably the last-minute scrambling that went on to try and rectify that. But more widely, you and I met on that 31st of March event. My eyes were opened by a lot of the activity going on there. I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to those who are involved in the charitable sector. And I'm sure you will get more support from the next assembly. one of the things that I'm keen to say is that the reason I want to cut back government expenditure is so that it is then available for those who need it most, rather than on my bus lane on the Esplanade. Yes, sir, I have had your email. I have flicked through it. I can't promise you I've read it more comprehensively than that. You know a heck of a lot more about this topic than I do. I would imagine the constable also does too. Personally, when I drive through here, I abide by 20 miles an hour, so I'm not your speeder, but there may well be others who are, so apologies for that. I know the constable has said he has sometimes struggles to get honorary policing around to sort of keep an eye on things, so maybe that's something they can look at. But as to actual traffic speed reduction matters, I'm in the hands of the constable, the infrastructure minister, and people like that who will know a lot more about this than I do. Thank you.
Thank you. David Ben.
Two great questions. Robert, we were asked the same question in St Mary by Tim DeGrushy, and I could respond positively. Immediately I received his email. I said yes, because the charity sector in this island does the most incredible amount of work. As you know, I'm involved with a charity, but we work more overseas than in the island, although what we do benefits the island enormously. But we are apolitical. But as you will have heard in my opening speech, I did say that we must continue and possibly improve the monies that we give to charities, because can you imagine what the cost would be if all of the charities pulled back tomorrow and said, we're not going to provide help for the blind, help for this, help for that? The government would implode, because we could not afford what the charities do. So we absolutely must continue supporting the charities wholeheartedly, and yes, I absolutely do. Alan, as you know, you and I have been communicating on this. As we drive through the village, unfortunately, to use a general term, this is the main drag through St Peter's all the way out to St Wan's and St Mary's. So it is a problem. When I was visiting the homes at Clos de la Roye, residents there were saying that we need a zebra crossing. People from those houses cannot cross the road quickly, and yet they want to get to the shops, and some of them can't drive. They have scooters and chairs, and they need to be able to get safely across the road. Equally, there's quite a lot of people living opposite to M&S, and it would be great if there would be a crossing there. The issue of traffic, of course, lies with the Le Connétable and the Roads Committee and the infrastructure, but I don't see why, as deputies, we can't put pressure on them, because the worst thing is to have a death. I was very involved with a family that caused a death in one parish, and the grief on that lady's face at the funeral, I will never, ever forget. And we cannot allow that to happen again. So we do have to control traffic far more strictly. And you know, if you're driving through here at 20, it takes seconds, only seconds longer than if we drive at 30 or break the speed limit. It's stupid to drive any closer to the speed limit. Thank you.
Arlene.
Robert, in answer to your question, yes, I have signed the pledge and I'm fully committed to the work and recognise. I think the number was over 300 million is the contribution that charities make. On that, I support a wider support from a minister on that. So. We have at the moment an assistant minister for charities. I'd really like to see that ministry grow, and I support the work of the charities commissioner, and believe that the whole charity sector could be really robust in the future. Alan, thank you for your question, and I really commend you for the amount of work you've put in to this issue and your passion to see something done. And I think it's a travesty, quite honestly, that you've worked so hard and have seen very little change. And especially in researching this, I've learned that there's a collision and casualty reduction plan, And in fact, the whole government has a unit that is dedicated to road safety. I don't want to see this as a report on the shelf. This needs to be put into action urgently in the parishes, and we need to have a vision for the entire parish, for connectivity and how that's going to work, especially with the new developments. Yes, just to reiterate, it's it's not to be a report on the shelf, but some serious action. This plan, collision and casualty reduction plan, sits across 3 ministers, right? So I want to see greater responsibility from these ministers in delivering what is best for parishioners.
Time to wrap up. Thank you, Arlene. Helen.
Robert, thank you for the question on Association of Jersey Charities. I'm pleased to confirm, I couldn't say this in St Mary's, I can now. I have now signed and returned the pledge, having caught up on that part of my email, and I fully support it. As others have said, we recognise that charities do a huge amount of work in this island, some of it rather more visible than some of it that is less well known. And I think it's important also that we bear in mind there's a huge range of charities, and where government is dealing with the charity sector, it's not a one-size-fits-all model. How government can best support and help charities varies a lot according to a number of factors, including the size of charities. Where the government is contracting essential services through charities, we need to look at the arrangements in place for that to ensure both that they are fair to the charity and enable it to plan its budget on a multi-year basis and engage staff and give those staff reasonable security of employment, and also to ensure that the service provision is solid and we know it's going to continue into the foreseeable future. Because where these things only last for a short time, that is to the detriment of the people relying on the service as well as to the charity providing it. Alan, on your question, thank you indeed. I have received your email. I must apologise I haven't replied to that yet. I do still have a number of emails to catch up on. And thank you for the work you've done on this. I think that the age, perhaps, that was prevalent in the 1980s when I was young, that the motorist is supreme and everyone else has to fit in around the motorist, is behind us, and it should be, and I hope it is. And I would fully agree with what others have said, that a slight reduction in speed for safety is important and will become particularly important, and I hope a focus with the new housing development in Ville de Manoir. So I hope we will attend to that in connection with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Russell.
Robert, the annual accounting that the States now does must be abandoned, and we should go back to a 4-year financial plan. That's efficiency in itself, and it means that charities who at the moment have to go through that cumbersome and laborious process to get their grant every single year will only do it once a term, and then they will have certainty on their grants to be able to plan properly for the future. That's what I would go for. I mean, just think of the administration time, not only for the charities, but the civil servants who have to receive these 12-page documents, loads of business plans, projections, what have you. A civil servant, or at least 2 or 3, have got to read all that. It's inefficient. Alan, okay, in your 15 years of campaigning, you will probably have been bounced between infrastructure, or whatever the department was called at the time, and the parish, and whether it's a parish road or whether it's an infrastructure road and what have you. My solution to that would be to devolve more power to the constables and give them the responsibility to decide what speed limits and have the power to decide which speed limits each road in their parish should have on them. And then just send a memo to infrastructure to put the signs up. I think that would help make it more efficient. I do sympathise. Speeding is an issue which people like to run from because the anti-speed limit lobby are very vocal. So what are you going to do? Listen to the vocal people on social media and what have you? Or listen to communities living on these roads and sometimes an absolute nightmare for them? I mean, we have a pair of mallard ducks that have been visiting us for 3 years, and last week I scraped the female off the road because she was run over. Before that, a massive collision. The guy was airlifted to Southampton 2 or 3 months ago. I hope he's okay. So I'm on your side.
Thank you. Lucy Stevenson.
Thank you, Robert. Yes, I've signed the pledge. I did so as soon as it arrived in my inbox, I think. And my manifesto also includes the commitment to recognise the vital role played by Jersey's charities and commit to strengthening partnerships between government and the third sector. Because, as you quite rightly point out, this is really, really important. And the feedback is that it needs to be handled much better than it has been done in the past. I am a founding governor of an infertility charity, and I have seen firsthand how some of those interactions with government can work. Some can be very positive, and actually it isn't always all about money. It's about being asked for feedback, and in our case as a charity, it's about speaking to people who are impacted by infertility. Now, you can ask them the question, but then what do you do with that information? If the answer is nothing, and then you come back time and time again to ask the same question, you're going to lose their faith very, very quickly. So it's about more than just money, but absolutely support strengthening those ties. Alan, we've chatted in the past, and thank you for your email and for raising this important issue again. You have been also backed up by a number of people on the doorsteps in recent weeks who are all saying the same thing. We have been promised that there will be a village review of safety and speed limits with the new developments. The promise from government has been not to do things in individual, but do it all together as part of one big plan. Well, the time, I think, is here for that now, and that work needs to start. So I think it's up to the next deputies to work closely with the Conotab, sit down, get a plan together about the key areas, what people want to see, where the biggest issues are, and move forward in a really coordinated way. And actually, we've all been running campaigns over these past few weeks. We've become practiced at it. So it's time for a campaign, really, working together in that coordinated way to try to make a difference. That way, I think we might see some progress. Thank you.
Thank you for those answers. Do we have another 2 questions to ask the candidates? There's one there and another one at the back there.
Thank you very much. Good evening, candidates. Patrick Lynch from Ville de l'Église across the road. I thought I'd follow on from Robert as somebody who actually runs a charity here in the island. One of the phrases we've heard most in this election is cost of living crisis, but not many people have actually explained what it is, quantified it, or come up with actual suggestions of how to fix it. So just to put it in perspective, we as a charity would call the cost of living crisis poverty. And 24% of the island's children live in relative poverty at the moment. Additionally, food bank usage has gone up from 195 families to over 650 between the 2 elections. Most of those people are in work on low wages. A way to solve this and to reduce this food bank usage would be to move the minimum wage to parity with the living wage over the lifetime of the next assembly. So a 2-fold question. 1, will you support that move from the minimum wage to the living wage over the lifetime of the assembly? Something which I'm glad to say the parish of St Peter has already done. And secondly, that is something over the 4 years, but that won't, as somebody said to me the other day, put food on the table or heat houses this winter. So I'd like also one suggestion of a meaningful policy that can be implemented in the first 6 to 9 months of the next assembly to put food on the table and heat houses. Thank you.
Now, candidates, do you want to count that as your 2 questions? Or do you want another one as well? Sorry? Have that. We'll have that as the 2 questions this time, and then we'll come back to this gentleman over here next, because I think that is 2 questions, isn't it? So first to answer this one is David Benn.
Patrick, thank you very much. You'll remember from my opening speech that I did say that to reduce the cost of living, we need to take several actions. One is to, you'll have to excuse me, reduce harbour dues, freight costs, increasing childcare provision, increasing the tax threshold and fuel duty. We need to leave more money in people's pockets so they can afford food. 4 years ago in St Owen's Parish Hall you asked a similar question, and I said that it's appalling in an island like this that we have homeless people and also that we have food banks. It really is terrible. It breaks my heart because we are a wealthy island at the end of the day. I know the government's spending too much, but we are a wealthy island and we should not have people in this situation. As regard to a meaningful policy, I think actually I've answered that in the first part, which is that we do have to reduce costs so that the lower paid, and of course we need a meaningful living, assistance, because without that, people who aren't earning enough won't be able to afford their food. But also, of course, it goes further than that in that it's not only the very poor bracket that are suffering at the moment, it's people earning 2 salaries who have children at school, who have a mortgage, who need to keep their cars going, etc. And they too are struggling. On 2 salaries, people are struggling. Actually, you've probably all heard today that Tony Blair has criticised the Labour government for moving towards a living wage. I do think we ought to be, and of course we know the parish has moved towards a living wage, so that is good. It will hurt many sectors, and we have to be very careful of that, because what we don't want to do is to stop people from being able to employ, because that is another factor. If we prevent people from employing by paying too much, then of course people cannot earn. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's a very difficult thing. But I do believe that we should be moving towards a living wage in the term of this government, but hopefully by improving business, as I've said in my opening speech, and bringing more business in, then people will be earning more money. That's
Thank you.
terribly important.
Arlene.
Thanks for your question, Patrick. And, of course, wages haven't kept up with inflation. And by definition, the cost of living is that gap of how much we earn and what it costs to live. And no doubt that gap has really grown. I think, as I said in my opening speech, I think it's, getting candidates together to tackle this big issue. Your first question was, will I support a living wage? I understand some of the concerns that businesses have regarding a jump to a living wage and the pressure that will put on small businesses especially. But I think what you're suggesting is an incremental rise towards that wage, and I think this is a sensible approach that we can look at in order to support businesses as well. So I was glad to hear the apprentice scheme, for example, was brought back to a proper apprentice scheme. So the answer to that question is yes. In terms of the policy to address the cost of living, I think there's no golden bullet, and we need an overall approach. But I think some of my key areas are supporting childcare costs, where working parents have nursery costs, which are the cost of a mortgage. It's adding tremendous pressure. So I think it's continuing to support childcare, because we need people to get back into the workforce to support the overall economy. So I think those are my points.
Thank you. Helen.
Thank you for the question, Patrick. You ask about the cost of living crisis, which you characterise for those where it hits the hardest as poverty, and I would agree with that characterisation. It is utterly scandalous that in an island where there is as much money as there is in Jersey, we have seen the increase in food bank usage from just under 200 families to 650 that you describe. We should all be ashamed that that is happening. Do I support the move over the next term of the minimum wage, the statutory minimum wage, to the living wage? Yes, I most certainly do. As you and others may be aware, Reform Jersey has long campaigned for the living wage, and I would fully support that and stand by it. The second question you asked was, given that it will take some time for the minimum wage to rise to match the living wage, what support might we be able to give to people for this winter? Here the challenge is targeting support correctly. I think where families with young children are concerned, which you rightly pointed out, is a group that is disproportionately badly affected by poverty to the detriment of those children, so we should all be concerned about that. One way we can target help is through a back-to-school bonus. Admittedly, a slight downside of that is it doesn't impact families whose children are not yet of school age, but for those families with children of school age, a back-to-school bonus like the one we've recently seen is one way of targeting that group. Targeting other people who are most severely affected by the cost of living, we would need to think of a different route. One possibility that occurs to me is possibly fuel utility subsidies to people on pay-as-you-go cards rather than utility billing might be a route of reaching some of those people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Russell.
Thank you. By the way, Robert, I did sign the pledge. I forgot to mention that. Patrick, the first one I would do to put money in people's pockets, which is the best help for people in a cost of living crisis. I favour the social security payments holiday, strictly time limited, provided there is a surplus in the social security fund. I think that's projected and there's an audit coming. You take a % off employers' contribution and employees' contribution and the self-employed contributions. That would cost about £20 million, but if that is there, surplus, it would be a very good use of that money because it will put money in people's pockets. I think I might have nicked that idea from Jonathan Reniff, so I should credit him. And the second one, David touched on, there's a direct correlation between freight costs and the price of the food in our shops and other items. And freight costs have gone up with DS, and also harbour dues have gone up, and they've introduced a flat rate, which, by the way, is disastrous. There's no volume discounts now. It's a flat tonnage rate, and that's disastrous for the potato industry, getting potatoes off the island. But yeah, we need to engage with or lean on DFDS and Ports of Jersey to reduce freight costs and harbour dues.
Thank you. Lucy.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Patrick. We no longer have, in my view, a cost of living crisis, but a sustained long-term economic challenge, but also, as you quite rightly point out, a human challenge as well. And, you know, we know that up here in St. Peter, there's now a Western food bank that's been running since October and is proving very, very popular, and I believe is running very, very well. Obviously, it's a very sad position to be in, but that is the reality of life. And our parishes up here, we're not immune to that as well, and we shouldn't forget that. The living wage, yes, I absolutely support moving to the living wage. That is in my manifesto, and I continue to support that position. As to the second part of your question, I'm going to be a bit cheeky and not give you one answer, but actually a short, medium and long-term answer. So initially, I will have a proposition ready to go on removing 10p per litre on fuel duty, and I will be ready to lodge it straight away. That's a short-term action. Yes, it's not going to solve everything for everybody overnight, but it's a little bit more money in people's pockets when things are really spiking. Food costs is the more medium term, and that's the kind of 6 months one that I see. It's going to take some harder work. As Russell's pointed out, I think the flat rate freight card is a big part of that. I don't personally think that removing GST is an overnight solution to seeing meaningful change on prices there. But when we have reports showing that we have over 30% higher food costs here in Jersey, we need to find out what those real drivers are and actually start tackling them pretty quickly. Then my long-term one as well is actually a reflection on what are we doing as an island to tackle the drivers of poverty, not just the firefighting and helping people eat and heat their homes, but what are we doing to look at what's causing it and how can we help to reduce it. And my first point of call on that would be education. We're not working hard enough at the most basic levels to lift those children out of poverty as
Thank
they
you.
grow up.
Chris.
Patrick, moving the minimum wage to the living wage, I think, is an aspiration, but I don't believe that's a practical measure we can take. If you talk to people who are not in the finance industry, they will tell you they're probably going to shut shop if you do that. If you talk to the agriculture community, tourism community, hospitality, they are all struggling. Their margins are wafer thin, and those businesses have to be open in order for anyone to pay any wages. And so whilst I believe we must do our best to counteract the poverty that you so rightly talk about and know about, I don't believe that moving to that wage is realistic. If you read Carl Parslow's piece about the two-tier economy we have, he said none of that will affect the finance industry in the slightest. It will only affect the rest of the economy. And the poor people who are running those businesses, who at the end of the day are the employers or the sole traders, are struggling themselves. So I believe, as I say, it is an aspiration, yes. But if you move everyone from minimum to living wage, then anyone on the living wage is going to want to move up too, and we just have a whole cascade effect. In terms of what we do on the actual poverty itself, the government has got levers, and we've heard it here. We've got Ports of Jersey. We've got the JEC, which came up at our previous hustings. I don't understand why our government has so little control over things it has 100% share ownership of. If we want cheaper electricity for certain parts of the community, our government ought to be able to make JEC do that. And it ought to be able to tell the Ports of Jersey that their charges don't need to make a profit necessarily. It's an amenity for all of us. We have to have access to those. Thank you.
Thank you for those answers. Now another 2 questions. We had somebody over there who wants to ask a question. Is there anybody else who'd like to be one of those 2? There's a lady here on the end.
Good evening. My name is Ross Bates. I'm in St Peter in the south. Between the bills for guidance on trans inclusions in schools voted a couple of months ago and the EHRC ruling in the UK less than a week ago that bathrooms may only be used based on sex assigned at birth, I expect the next assembly to face many more debates and propositions regarding the rights of trans people. My question is, do you believe we should or should not adopt the EHRC ruling, and what, in your view, is appropriate support and safeguarding for young trans islanders? Thank you.
Thank you. It's what rights there should there be for young trans islanders? Is that your question? Yes. Right. Okay. That's the first question. And the second over here, second row back.
Good evening. My name's Christine Cohen. I've been in St Peter's for 47 years. I've got 2 grown-up sons that are in their 50s. When they were at St Peter's School, I was the lollipop lady. Now, it really concerns me to think there is no way of slowing the traffic in front of the St Peter's School. St Mary's have got things in place. St John's have got a zebra crossing. Trinity School, and they're on a main road, they have got calming things happening. And at St Martin's. So why, and I have mentioned this to the parish a few times about this, and I am really concerned about the children. And I'm so worried that one day something will happen to a child and then they'll say, oh, we should have done something about it. It'll be too late then.
Thank you. So your question is, what can we do to make the crossing safer near the primary school in this parish, in St Peter? Can you just take the microphone back to the first questioner? Because there was an organisation you mentioned. Was it the UNHRC? So it was to follow the UNHRC recommendations?
It was if we should or should not follow the EHRC ruling on that bathrooms should only be allowed based on sex assigned at birth.
Okay, so Arlene is the first to answer these two questions.
Apologies for not standing up before, but I shall stand now. Thank you for your question. It's it's a issue that's been in the media quite a lot recently. So look, I support supporting our young people on their journeys in life. Whether they fit into this box or that box, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that we support them on their journey. And there are a lot of young people that are finding themselves, and we just need to be behind them and allow the schools to support them, to our systems to support young islanders. So that's what I have to say on that. In terms of the infrastructure, and well done for being a lollipop lady. I think they're fantastic, and what you do. So I referenced it before about the collision and casualty reduction plan. I would like to sit down with those three ministers who are responsible for that plan, and I would like a complete audit. And I think it's been alluded to that during the development there was a certain safety audit that had to be passed in order for that development to go ahead. So there has been commitment, but we need to look at the village as a whole and the connectivity as a whole. And I would like to see that from our infrastructure and health and safety department, working with the constables on this issue to really cement the parish and provide the heart of the parish again. And I do understand that, it's really difficult with that speeding there. My mum is as a pensioner living in the parish, and, quite frankly, is sometimes quite terrified at crossing the road.
Helen.
Thank you. On the first question, thank you for raising this. There's been an awful lot of media coverage about the recent State's debate on the guidance for schools, I'm aware, and I think it's very unfortunate that this is an issue which seems to polarise and be used to position people and divide people into opposing camps. So I'm going to try and sit on the fence a little bit and avoid being stereotyped in either of those opposing camps, because I think it's important that we recognise that there is a real need to support those people in society who feel that they are in the wrong body. And there have always been people like that you can trace back historically. On the specific question of you in our HCR ruling on using bathrooms and sex assigned at birth, I think it's a very difficult question, because whichever way you go, you risk, or as a general ruling, you risk making life rather difficult for some people. I think it's probably best that in institutions and places where this is a live issue, arrangements are made on a bespoke basis in relation to a particular situation. On the question about St Peter's School, thank you, and the traffic and the children, I think it's quite telling and in some ways quite welcome that we've had two questions on traffic this evening, because it does show that there is a strength of feeling on this and that it's a real issue. I do not want to live in a society where people feel that they have to go and pick their older primary child up from school because of road safety when they would otherwise be happy to let that child make their own way home. And I think that we need to do what we can to make road safety not a barrier to letting our children acquire independence as they grow up.
Thank you. Russell.
Yes, I'm sorry to the first question. I didn't catch all of the question, and I'm not completely familiar with the ruling that we're talking about. I think all our young transgender people should be supported and helped. and I was impressed with the Assembly on one of their last sittings in the way in which it dealt with Senator Balash's proposal. I thought that was an extremely mature debate. It gave me confidence about the way our education department are assisting young transgender children and young people. St. Peter's School, I did a lot of local issues. I was a deputy of St. Helier from 2014 to 2022. I worked a lot. I did those propositions I was talking about earlier that I brought. A lot of them were to do with local issues, with you know, a green street in Harvey Park or something like that. And I would always work with my constable. We worked very closely together, and most of the time he supported me. And if he didn't, we went our separate ways. But that was quite rare. So to make progress, I think we would, you know, your deputies need to support you and go to your constable and see if we can work something out. So that's what it's all about. And the better we all work together, collaboratively, the better the outcomes, for sure.
Thank you. Lucy.
Thank you. On your first question, I stand as an ally with our trans community here in Jersey and voted against P14 and spoke against it very strongly, and will continue to actively engage with the community as and when required, when debates, if they come up. But it was unfortunate that debate came to the Assembly, but I think once it had been lodged and put on the agenda and the public conversation started, actually it was important that we did have that debate, so that, as Russell said, as an Assembly we could make our position very, very clear on there. The specific ruling that you mention, it's not something I have an in-depth knowledge of and would want to comment on without that. But as I say, ongoing engagement with the community and others is really important when we make public comments on those kind of things. When it comes to the second question, the school is one of the areas that I mentioned and I have been made aware of. Having spoken to the constable about it as well, I know the parish have been trying. I think they've been waiting for they've been promised some extra signs to be put up as a start, because some of the signage is really not very good in that area. And even that's not happened. And trying to cross it the other day, even without children, it was not a comfortable experience myself. So I am aware it is a real challenging area. I think zebra crossings is a really obvious answer, and I can't see why they couldn't exist there. It's a straight bit of road. So I think it's one of those that I think we need to work with the Connotab, as others have said, and actually really, really push for this as well as one of the key areas, because it has been highlighted and we're not seeing any action, and we've got to do better for you on that.
Thank you. Chris.
On the first question, patently this is a very sensitive issue. I mean, all children should be treated with kindness. That should just be a given, however. I think the question you're asking specifically is, should we follow the ruling? And the reality is, having worked for the Law Officers Department, I can tell you that if there's a common law ruling about something, Jersey courts will follow it for the most part, unless they seriously disagree. But for the most part, they will follow a ruling that is dished out in a UK court of such prominence. Now, I know it's caused all sorts of comment. The Education Department, I believe, was completely wrong-footed by the ruling, and you will note that there's nothing much come out in the UK subsequently, because they're all trying to work out the implications of it. So it is not really the sort of thing that we can just chat about here without all the full facts at our disposal. In terms of traffic calming across the school, yes, you're quite right. I pass by all of the schools you mentioned and often wave to the lollipop ladies and men. No, well, okay, but the ones who are there these days. It would seem a perfectly sensible suggestion for one to go in there, and I can't imagine why it hasn't been done already, but I'm sure you've raised it now, we've all heard it, and if whichever three of us are around can help the constable get that implemented, I'm sure we will. Thank you.
Thank you. David.
The first one I find very, very difficult. It's I know somebody who's going through a transition at the moment, an adult, and I find it's a very difficult process to not only to understand. I certainly accept it, but what I find is very difficult is the struggle that poor person is going through to actually get enough courage to move to where he or she wants to be. So I find it's a very difficult subject to answer. And I do know two ladies who are married who are very worried about it and the changes in facilities, etc. The question of the traffic goes back to the same that Alan brought up, really. Yes, it is very, very dangerous along there. When the road was blocked there was far more traffic coming that way, and it was quite difficult at times, particularly at school tipping out time, as it were. And I see no reason why there shouldn't be a crossing there, because it's not a major trunk road, is it, at the end of the day? And the children do need to be safe at the end of the day, as I said before. But it's not only there, actually. As we were walking around the village, talking to people within the villages here and other villages, all are saying that the traffic is moving far too fast within the villages, let alone on the road. There are people who seem to think that 20 mile an hour or 15 or even 10 in a village is not to be, is to be totally ignored, which is really very silly. We do need to be looking after the safety of our children for obvious reasons.
Thank you. Okay, two more questions. Let's go over to this side. We've got a person in the green T-shirt and another one to go to as well. And over at the end as well.
Good evening. And firstly, may I take my hats off to the six of you for pounding the streets and knocking on doors in this weather.
Have you got your name and...
Oh, sorry, Ronan Tudin from St. Peter's. Well done for pounding the streets. It's hard enough as it is in normal circumstances. In this weather, it must be unbearable. And if any of you knock on the door, I'll find a fridge and find something for you. My question is very simple. In the 2025, our government spent £118 million more than it earned. So that's a deficit of £118 million, which is just shy of 10% of its overall income. This has been going on for 5 years, and the cumulative amount, I believe, comes to over £300 million. So my question to all of you is, what are you going to do about it, and how are you going to, within the first 6 months of being elected, and I wish you all good luck, what are you going to do within the first 6 months of getting elected to reverse this particular trend? Thank you.
Thank you. So that's what you're going to do to reverse the trend of spending more than is earned. And the other question?
My name's Gavin Hennigan from St. Peter's. How would you improve frontline services from government departments without increasing their budgets?
So that was, how do you improve frontline services from the government without increasing the budget? Related questions. So first to answer this. Oh yeah, what did you? Yes, you did give us your name. What was it? Didn't hit. Gavin. Okay. So first to answer this time is Helen.
Thank you very much for the question, Roland. Now, there's a challenge for us. I am, of course, a Reform Jersey candidate. We've set out a costed manifesto as to what we would do. And firstly, I will say, on the 5 years of spend, clearly it's not a sustainable situation to be in a position of expenditure exceeding income, though, of course, part of that 5 years was COVID recovery. And in those very particular circumstances, I don't think that was inappropriate. We would remove the caps for the very highest earners. We're talking here about people earning more than about £320,000 a year on both employers' social security and long-term care contributions, which would generate additional revenue. We also have a fully costed tax policy whereby we would reduce the marginal rate from 26 to 25% and charge everybody the marginal rate of 25%, which would be a tax decrease for single people on incomes of about less than about 80,000 and people with additional allowances on slightly higher incomes, and an increase from a rate of 20 to 25% for those on incomes where the marginal rate does not apply currently. So we've got a policy that's costed and will enable us to provide government services as set out in our manifesto with that tax base. Second question, what can we do to improve the efficiency of government services? I think it depends which ones. In some cases, it's quite hard to know without knowing specifically what services you're thinking of, but in some cases, better data, better digital information and IT infrastructure that works is part of the answer, I think. And we have had a rather unfortunate history of government IT projects that haven't delivered what was promised. Beyond that, I think staff training is important, but I'd be interested to talk to you about what specifically you have in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Russell.
Yes, well, we have to cut spending. We have to make efficiencies. We have to attempt to grow the economy so we can increase revenue. These are all the hot topics of this election. And you, ladies and gentlemen, you are likely to put back into office the same people who got us into this mess. Maybe that's a good thing, and they might know better how to get us out of this mess. But I shall certainly be support. I think there's one or two returning people, and certainly one new name that I favour, but who talks a lot of sense. So let's hope they get in too. But it is a false economy when trying to make efficiencies to cut frontline services, because it ends up costing you more money to repair the damage you're doing. So the frontline services need to be sacrosanct. And I think the recruitment freeze that Lyndon has started is not on frontline staff. I think it's middle management at the moment. And somewhere, I think two answers merged into one, Roland. Were you wanting, what else did you want from me? What am I going to do about it? First thing, well, I mean, support every initiative and effort made to make those efficiencies. I think they're there. I think you remember when you were in the assembly. I remember some archaic practices which could easily get rid of. I mean, we almost need a Doge, but not in a Trumpian way. But I think everybody should look around for efficiencies. Digitization of the health service records. Why am I still getting my doctor's appointment by snail mail? Things like that. So we've got to pull together and make sure we can make these efficiencies.
Thank you. Lucy.
Thank you, and thank you for the question, Roland. And if I am re-elected, I go in with the principles of spending less, saving more, and stop raiding the Social Security Fund to pay for day-to-day spending. First 6 months, obviously, perhaps it will just fall outside of it, maybe not, but we'll have a budget to debate as well, and we will see various decisions coming forward, and I would go into it with those principles in mind. When it comes to cutting government spending, it's my view that the easy stuff, as it were, has already been done. The recruitment freezes, the removing of the roles that don't have anybody in them. The next phase is going to be harder, but it also needs to be very thoughtful as a result, in my view, because otherwise you just move costs elsewhere. I don't want to see salami slicing. I want to see meaningful, carefully and considered and informed decisions about where spending should be cut. The chief executive, I think, has said we can do it for $1 billion. I don't know quite what he's basing those figures on, but it will be interesting to see more there. When it comes to me personally, in the first 6 months, what I will also be pushing for is some long-term sustainable decision making, as I said at the beginning, because there's too many decisions that have been put off for too long, and we've got to start the process. For example, looking at future health spending and others that has been promised for years and years and never delivered, because that drives a lot of the deficits that we're seeing and the increases in costs. Gavin, coming to your question, it's an interesting one to follow how we cut spending, but then how do we keep, how do we make sure that we've got higher quality services? To me, it's about empowering the people who work for you. So what we've got to be careful when we're talking about cuts and making inefficiencies, and we're talking a lot about people and headcount at the moment, Actually, we've got to be careful that we don't demoralise people further and actually see the opposite effect. So to me, it's about how we empower our staff, how we listen to them, how we approach them for the ideas about how they can make their departments better and make meaningful change.
Chris.
So Roland, £180 million. I've got an analogy. People always get annoyed with my analogies, but a Formula One car doesn't win a race because it goes at 200 miles an hour. It wins a race because it's half a second quicker than the car next to it. So that's the essence of Formula One cars. What I want to do is make our civil service 10% better, costing us 10% less. There's your 180 million. I can't promise it in the first 6 months, though. What we have to do is change the culture. I don't know how many of you experience government on a daily basis, but Maggie and I did a house up. We spent 3 years, we had a builder doing it with us, and every time we wanted to do something, he said, oh, building regs doesn't do this and building regs doesn't do that. We ended up with 8 smoke detectors in a semi-detached house with 11 rooms. We tried to sell it. Building regs came to sign it off and told us we needed 2 more. We have to change these sorts of things. But what we need to do is change the culture, because our civil servants have been put in a position where they're worried about risk, the risk of getting something wrong. And so they do everything in their power not to do something wrong, but they lose sight of the actual delivery of the thing they're supposed to be doing for us, the taxpayer, the voter. And I think basically the 2 questions boil down to one. We have to change the culture. And I've heard Alan McLean, Mark Boliar, Serena Kirsten all talking about engaging with the civil servants we've got to get the best ideas in order to break through and to stop this risk-averse culture that is just handcuffing all of us and costing us so much more money than it needs to do to deliver a very simple thing. Those who've heard me before have heard about Natalie Mayer and her bus stop out at Rue de Trode. 2 years after she started corresponding with government, she still hasn't got one, because she's passed from infrastructure to planning to the Chief Minister's office and back again and all the rest of it. So, you know, it is possible for this to be improved, but I believe it's down to culture. Thank you.
David.
Two of the senators at the hustings at St Mary's admitted that many, many reports are written, which cost a fortune, of course, and they're put on the shelf and never looked at. And that is an absolutely ridiculous situation. We have been very, very poor at taking long-term decisions. To refer to something that Chris spoke about earlier, instead of maintaining Fort Regent over the years and spending $1 million here, $1 million there, 5 million maybe, we've now got a bill of 150 million. Who doesn't maintain their property or their own personal infrastructure so that it's permanently in good condition? Well, I know who. The government doesn't, which is quite ridiculous, really, because we all do. And we need to take a long-term view of all projects, not a short-term view, and make sure that we can afford them and they're costed properly. We wouldn't be in this situation with the hospital had it been viewed long-term many, many, many years ago when it was first identified as needing replacing. Reinvigorating the economy obviously is very important, because we've got a reinvigorated economy, we're employing more people, and we're making more money, which is, it's a no-brainer. On the frontline services, there are many frontline services we need more people in, particularly in healthcare, to reduce waiting lists and to help people, actually. People say there are far too many people in the back offices. There may well be, but AI is coming around like a train down a track very fast, and AI will take a lot of those jobs away. So maybe using AI in the administration and reducing the number of people needed in the administration, we can increase the frontline services and improve what we do for people's health and other services. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlene.
Thanks, Roland, for your question. So I think the government should stop acting in silos And unfortunately, this is the ministerial government that we have at the moment, which doesn't lend itself to cross-department communication. Some of the savings that are going on at the moment, as you're probably aware, that the Chief Exec has implemented, is the cutting of consultants. I would suggest using local people who would deliver more value for money instead of parachuting consultants in from the UK. I would suggest a reviewing of the arm's length bodies. I know the comptroller has already done a comprehensive review, so we must take those recommendations seriously. And we must remember that Jersey is a small jurisdiction. We're not a big country, and we have to cut our cloth accordingly. And we need to prioritise what our spending is going to be. And we need to grow the local economy in order to support those funds so that we can replenish those funds that we're using for day-to-day spending. And Gavin, I think that probably ties into your question about frontline services. I know some of those cuttings hopefully will go towards more frontline servicing, but as it's been suggested, I think there needs to be a whole look at how we can streamline those in terms of using technology and making our services not top-heavy, but to look at what we need to deliver those vital public services.
Thank you. Thank you for all those answers. Another 2 questions. There's 3. We'll have this person here, and I think that person had his hand up first, and then we'll come to you afterwards, okay? So the checked blue and white shirt.
Good evening, I'm Jean, and I hope you're not going to prevent me asking a question because I live in St. Juan.
I think we're doing St. Peter first.
Well, apologies, but I have to be away next week, and I just can't make St. Juan's. It's a very short question. We've heard a lot about working together, and most of the candidates will know that I lodged a petition which is simply asking to review whether the existing shape of government, the machinery of government, is doing the job that it was promised 20 years ago. So the petition is straightforward, it's very easy, and what I'd like to know from the candidates is whether they would support if a proposition was put before the states to actually action that.
Okay, thank you for that question. And there was another one back there. Can you put your hand up again, the person? Yes, it was you over there, wasn't it?
Good evening. My name is Peter Fancourt, and I live in St. Peter. I have done since 1987. Now, very laudable speeches for all the candidates, their opening speeches. This question is not what I was going to ask originally, but it's just looking around. I'm looking at nobody under 30. Now, how do you hope to get future voters to vote in a government if they're not turning up for hustings? How do you do it? I don't know how have you got answers for that? So that's my question. How do you get young people to hustings, to meetings, and show an interest in the government of the Jersey? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. That's the second question. How do you get young people to show an interest in politics? So first to answer is Russell.
So, Jean, I think underlying your review petition, which actually I would support, is a return to the committee system. Perhaps so. That's how it's sort of interpreted. I think a better way forward is to move forward with maybe a hybrid. I think there is probably more support than you realise out there, and people are starting to talk openly about the dear old committee system again. I mean, people, ministers and so on and so forth. I don't think going back to the committee system is a good idea, but going forward to a system which uses more of the talents available, is more collaborative, involves more people, is worth looking at, I think. Look, for goodness sake, it's taken us, 16 years and 200 million, and we haven't got a spade in the ground with a hospital. Fort Regent, there's a report costing I don't know how much every 2 years, and it's sitting there falling apart. And Jean is asking if we should look at the machinery of government. Of course we should look at it. I don't think the Assembly should spend a lot of time navel-gazing, because there is so much to get on with the economy, but we can do some work behind the scenes on this and see if we can't improve leadership and decision-making. It's not unusual to have, not only in this island, but in wherever, it's not unusual not to have an awful lot of young people at a hustings. It happens. You know, you get most interested in politics, I suppose, when you've got your first mortgage or something like that, and then you've got skin in the game. I mean, I remember when I was a kid in my year, there was probably 2 or 3 of us in the whole year who would be talking about the next election coming along and excited about it. It was, you know, really.
Thank you, Russell.
But education are doing much better in introducing politics into schools.
Lucy.
Thank you for your question, John. Yes, I would support a review as you suggest. I think who would carry out that review would be something that'd have to be carefully considered. We'd want them to have an independence of mind, that they are not wedded to either system, but also have an understanding of our unique position here in Jersey. That's a careful balance, a question for another day perhaps. The second question that follows from it, though, is also a bit like Russell, what we do with the information that's gleaned from such a review, and I'd hate to see it just sit on a shelf again. So yes, the principle of it, I think it leads on to other questions from there, as I'm sure you would have your own as well. On the second question, I think it was Peter, and to me, it's all about how we make politics meaningful. And in my opening speech, I said that was one of the things that had inspired me to stand for election in the first place. And I think it applies to all of us, but young people particularly. How do we talk about politics in a meaningful way and show people that it actually does impact on our day-to-day lives? Often in Jersey we see that when things start to go wrong, we see people come out and talk about it, but actually how do we talk about the good stuff as well, and sometimes the boring stuff? We've had a really interesting review by a scrutiny panel on the parish system, and that's made some good recommendations about how the parish system can be improved and gently modernised going forward. And I think talking, you know, appealing to young people and bringing more people generally into that system is a really good place to start. Whether we will always see under 30s at hustings, I don't know. Whether our hustings system generally needs a bit of a shake-up, perhaps it does for all of us as we go forward. But I think that would be a very good place to start. And just that good, clear communication, getting down on a level with individuals, talking about why politics matters and why it is meaningful.
Thank you. Chris.
Jean, I am going to come round for that 1-hour tutorial on the difference between the two systems. I think there is a fear factor amongst a lot of the existing assembly anyway, that it looks very decadent to start looking at your own structure and whatever when there are so many pressing things, the price of everything. However, I think there is also a consensus that whatever we have got now isn't working. I sat down and was talking to one of the more vocal former ministers recently, and he said, how on earth could anyone construct a system where the government is immediately the minority? Because your council is just such a few votes when you've elected 49 people. The voters expect all 49 to contribute, and that's really what the structure should do. It should utilise the power, the energy of all the people who were elected. So how we quite go about that, I don't know. Yes, I'll happily sign your proposition if I think there's enough energy in the room to make it happen. But I mean, re-engineering. I want more ministers. I want tourism and agriculture and sport all to be represented in that council. It's too closed shop at the moment. In terms of the youth, the Gref have done a brilliant job. It may not look like it tonight, but we've seen a lot of effort go into it. They've gone into the schools. Quite easy, I'd go. Why on earth are we having elections in June? It's the exam period. Where on earth should their attention be? It shouldn't be here, frankly. It should be on passing their exams. So if the school fair was brilliant. I think we all enjoyed having it. It's a better format for a sort of get to know you. But most of the schools didn't turn up because their kids were too busy on the exam schedule. So, you know, we've got to be intelligent. If we want them engaged, we've got to make it easy enough for them to do so. So that would be my starting point to change that, Peter.
David.
Yeah, Peter, to answer that one first, Chris is quite right. Oakfield was a very good idea that Vote.je came up with to engage the young with the potential politicians. But there were disappointingly few young people there, which is a shame. Although having said that, the ones that I did talk to were engaged and they were very interested. And on the doorstep, I have met with some young people who have been very engaged and very interested. The other problem, of course, is that at the moment, young people are either with their families or trying to get their very young children to bed, what have you. So it's difficult to juggle all of this and get young people engaged in a hustings like this. In terms of the review, yes, absolutely. I met a States member very soon after the last election, and they were going into the offices, the previous offices, not the new palace that they've got. And I said, how are you getting on? Oh, we can't get anything done. It's impossible, you can't get anything done. Under the committee system, which I was involved with quite a lot, one would go to see the whole committee with one's proposition. You'd put forward your proposition, then you'd leave, the committee would review it, and then the president would tell the officers what they were going to do. And while it was viewed as being laborious, it actually worked. And it's a shame that we threw it out completely. It would have been better if we had not cherry-picked from the Clothier report. The other thing is that if we do go for a review, please let's not go to somebody overseas to do the review. Let's get it done in-house, because if we go overseas, we're going to be paying a fortune for somebody. We paid a lot of money to a Mr. Ferguson to review the harbours going back in the 70s, and what did we do? We completely ignored all of his advice, because had we listened to his advice, we'd have an enormous outer harbour.
Thank you. Arlene.
Thanks for your question, John, and we've talked about that, and I think these two questions are really interrelated. Young people won't turn up to vote or for hustings because they're disillusioned with the government, because young people are saying, government doesn't get anything done. So I think we owe it to future generations to look at our system now, and hopefully in 4 years' time, we'll be sitting here and we'll say, look at all these young people here. And I do think the Gref are doing a good job in terms of more engagement. Some comments that younger people have said to me is like, why can't we vote online? They say it's too complicated, so this comes back to the simplification of our message. You know, let's be controversial. Australia have mandatory voting, so let's think about that. You know, how would that go down? But you know, it's our constitutional right, and we need to communicate to our young people that it's an absolute privilege to be able to vote, given this geopolitical situation that we're in. And I've certainly had great conversations with younger people to say, look, this is your voice, this is your chance. And I think if we make these changes as individuals and as a government and with bodies like the Gref, I think we will make a change, and I'm really hopeful.
Thank you. Helen.
Thank you very much for both questions. Jean, thank you for starting a petition. I would support this. In general, I'm very wary about supporting calls to commission reviews because it can turn out to be an expensive waste of money. But I think this is one that is warranted. Going around knocking on doors, I pick up on widespread dissatisfaction on ministerial government. A fair few people tell me they would like to see a return to the committee system. For various reasons, I'm not sure that is possible or desirable, but I understand the strength of feeling there, and I am inclined to share the view that the system of ministerial government is not in general working very well. I personally think it requires political parties. I don't think it works very well without political parties, and I think it would be better if we had rather more political parties than we do. But the brief enthusiasm for forming parties that we saw in the 22 election has kind of dissipated in the time since. The review would need to be very carefully commissioned as regard to who performs it, to avoid merely picking up on preconceived ideas wherever they might come from. But I think there should be no holds bars here. I think we should look both at why we've ended up with far more government assistant ministerial positions than originally envisaged in 2005, because I think, in fact, the government being too large a proportion of assembly members is a bit of a problem. It was originally quite a lot less than half. And I think also we should raise the question as to whether we actually need 49 states members or whether we could reduce the size of the assembly. So thank you for that. On the question about young people, there are indeed not very many young people here. I don't think that necessarily implies they won't vote. I think there's quite a lot of political engagement from young people. I looked on YouTube the other day. The St Mary hustings that we did had 679 views online. I don't know the age of those people, but people are also listening to the election call online and on Facebook. And I think some people may prefer to watch things online, and some people may, I think, possibly have preferred to go to the beach this evening if they are not at home putting their children to bed after a long day at work, as has already been said. Generational difference, I think.
Thank you for those answers. We need another 2 questions now. I said we would go to this person there, third row back. I'll come to you if there are no other people who want their first question. Anybody wanting to ask their first question?
Steve John from St Peter's. I'm actually modifying my question I was going to originally ask. So first I want to know, do you believe that AI has a place in government? I was going to ask about, because everyone's been talking about the cost of government, but that question has already been addressed. So I now want to know about, if you do believe it's got a role, how would you use this to achieve your pledges?
So how would you use AI in government? Who else has a question? There's somebody with the first question.
Hello, my name's Mark. Just 80% of a child's waking time is outside of education. What would you, give me 2 examples from all of you maybe, that what would you do for the children and young people of St Mary's, St Juan and St Peter?
That's quite an open question. What would you do for the children of the 3 parishes? So first answer this time is Lucy.
Thank you. Steve, I think it was, wasn't it, on AI in government. Yes, I think it's got its place. It does have its challenges and opportunities, I would say. And my understanding is that government and Digital Jersey are currently working on a way forward on it. I think there is trepidation, nervousness, because, and I think one of the main things leading that is about how data is used and protected and people's individual data going forward. I think that's something that's really, really key. And obviously we need to be very careful in that as well. Government is entrusted with a lot of data from people, and we need to make sure that that is handled in an appropriate way. But I don't think that should mean that government can't harness some of the power of AI going forward. I'm no expert, so I'm not going to give you and dare to give any examples, and you and others I'm sure will have more of those, and I would leave it up to the experts to come up with that plan and move forward. But as others have said in previous questions, you know, it's coming quickly, it's already here, and I think we can move forward on it quickly and work with others like Estonia, I think, on it also. Mark, great question. I would have liked a bit more time to think about it, but my first one of two will be to invest in our youth services, unsurprisingly. But actually, we've got really strong youth clubs in all three parishes. St Peter particularly has a very good relationship between the youth club, the parish and the community centre, and I know that other parishes across the island often look to it as a very good example. I think we can seek to strengthen that with government help more going forward. The second one is around, so when we were at the candidates fair talking about young people, and they came in to see us, some schools did attend, and I asked young people what they wanted, what their hopes for Jersey would be going forward, and a lot of them were around facilities and access to things to do in the island. So a really good example in St One, the Connotab is sat over there, is bringing a field into use for young people with a pump track at the back of it. Small things like that can make a huge difference.
Thank you, Lucy. Chris?
Steve, we've got this thing called Jersey Digital. I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure what it does, but I would be tasking it. We need to create a government portal where we can all interact with government in all ways, shapes or form, whether it's our library card or our health services or whatever. We just need to create that seamless way of dealing with government. It's going to require a lot of training and a lot of education. So I would be telling Digital Jersey, right, come up with a whole training program on AI that we can deliver into schools. Don't give it to the schools. We've all heard the teachers are burnt out already. But try and give it to a select team of people who know what they're talking about. I mean, this thing is moving every 6 months. It's transforming. So there's, it's important we get it into schools and get people to learn what they can do, what they shouldn't do. We need a skilled workforce here because the alternative is the big institutions that operate here already will bring in the trained people, and that will take jobs which could be done by islanders. And I, for one, don't want that to happen. I want our youngsters, or even older than youngsters, to be ready AI fit effectively so that we can utilize it and use the economies of scale that it will bring us. I don't know how many of you have tried AI yet. It is worrying and amazing at the same time. Mark, encourage outdoor activity. There's not enough pitches for the kids to play football on, so that's my first port of call. I can't work out why sports pitches are with infrastructure and then Jersey Sport is a completely different thing. The sports need to be able to deal with their own infrastructure because currently I gather it is causing sports of all descriptions a problem. I want children to be wet, muddy and have scratched knees. I would like that ethos to be put out there. You know, our kids need to learn what a risk is and know how to manage it, and leaving them indoors all the time doesn't resolve that.
Thank you. David?
I went to a seminar on AI 2 years ago that was at the Société Générale given by Digital Jersey. And the guy said, do not be afraid of it at all. It's a phenomenal tool and it is coming. And it is actually here. I spoke with a teacher today on my tour around St. One, and he is using it at Holia. I know that children are using it, adults are using it, I'm using it. It is here, and let's not be afraid of it. It's a wonderful tool, but a tool like a hammer, you have to direct, you have to use it correctly. And AI is here. It is going to help. It'll certainly reduce the number of frontline jobs, not frontline in services. You know, the administration. It will certainly reduce those. It'll certainly reduce the first tranche of people in a finance industry. And of course, then we need to retrain those. So AI is here, and we must embrace it. If we don't, we're in trouble as an island, really in trouble. Mark, for the children, one thing I said in my speech is that we must help people to remain healthy through their lives, and that begins at a young age. I went to a phenomenal youth club when I was young, and my children have, and you know, there is nothing better for a child's growth, both mentally and physically, than relaxing and playing and doing sports with their peers. It's a wonderful thing to do. And yes, we need to be encouraging as many activities as we possibly can. Unfortunately, as I said before, our government has not been forward-looking, and we've lost Fort Regent. I'm sure we all took our kids to Fort Regent swimming and playing when they were young. We must have. And it was a wonderful facility, and of course, stupidly, we've lost that, which is crazy. Hopefully it'll come back, but at what cost? You know, we've got to do something about that.
Thank you. Arlene.
Thank you for the question on AI and government. I think there's some departments that could really benefit from AI in its current state, and that's certainly in the policy department in terms of research. Jersey Finance's report, Time to Win, recommends that we move quickly to a more AI-driven automation. So moving from paper to digital, but using AI to improve the competitiveness of the finance service industry. So in my mind, with that report and that will to implement that, I think this is going to be sort of a test bed on how AI can be delivered as a tool. In terms of children in the parishes, I can only speak from my own experience, and that is as a surfer. I do work at the moment with GB Surfing to open up that sport up for younger people. A lot of children on the island can't swim, which is really worrying because we are an island and we need to have knowledge of the sea. So I would love to see more programs that introduce our youngsters to the sea safety, getting into the lifeguards. You know, the RNLI do a fantastic job. They open up many opportunities for young people. So I think it's at that early age, I would love to see more young people connected to our beautiful surf and sea.
Thank you. Helen.
Thank you very much for the question on whether AI has a place in government and how we could use it. It does have a place in government, I think. There are certainly uses for AI that I would fully support. Someone I know, for example, who's a software developer, tells me it can speed up his work considerably by helping with the routine tasks. And that kind of use of AI as very much our servant should be able to achieve some efficiencies and savings in back office functions of government. Exactly how, I don't have the technical expertise to say beyond the general indication I've given. Where it most certainly does not have a place in government, and I would want very strongly to advocate against using large language model generative AI, is in anything that requires human involvement, moral agency, or thought. There are studies increasingly showing that using it in that way in education actually decreases students' ability to think for themselves. And if we outsource our thinking to AI as states members, as politicians, or as civil servants, we are abdicating our responsibility, because the role requires people to make decisions and exercise agency, and you cannot outsource that responsibility to a stochastic model which predicts words based on probability. On the second question, thank you, Mark, about young people and the very considerable proportion of their time that they are not in school, I would fully support the work of the youth service. Whatever funding pressures we might have, we must ensure that that continues to be funded well, because it reaches a lot of young people, including the most disadvantaged. I've played a tiny part in that on the committee here of the youth centre, and I think road safety that we went back to earlier, enabling children to have increasing independence as they grow up, is very important.
Thank you. Russell.
I picked up from Alan McLean that Estonia introduced coding lessons to their primary schools in 2012, and they've been reaping the benefits ever since. I think our school children need to have, need to leave primary school digital and AI literate, and that should be introduced into the primary school curriculum. As to what would I do for young people and children in the parishes? Well, I misspent my youth at the Jersey Young Farmers Club, and that was a good club because the members, the young people, ran it themselves, and it was a good age range, 14 to 21, I think. And when the skateboarding community left, got chucked out of the harbour and had no home, I called the skateboarding community together in a meeting at the town hall, and everybody said nobody had come, and it was absolutely packed. We laid out 200 chairs. It was absolutely packed for the first time because, you know, the sports department were beginning to look at where to put a new skateboard park. And I thought, well, this is the wrong way around. I got those people together for one aim, to listen to them, listen to what they wanted, because they were the experts and they were the users of it. And so what I would pledge for young people is listen to them. It's not for me to, I'm 63 now, so I think they've got a better idea of what they need. But I have heard, especially older young people, older teenagers, they like the new Jersey Bowl, but they still find there could be enough to do here, more
Thank
to
you,
do
Russell. Right, well, we've got 5 minutes. Is anybody got a short question that would require one quite quick answer from the candidates? Okay, we haven't got time for 2, I don't think. Sorry, but I think I will go to this person because he hasn't asked a question before. So, nice short question that they can say something short in response to.
Thank you. Yes, very short. What are the opinions of the candidates on double taxation to the OAPs?
Thank you. Double taxation of OAPs. That's the old age pension part of pensions. First to answer this question will be Chris.
I don't think there's a short answer to that question, I'm afraid. The government is spending more than it's getting in at the moment. I don't believe that's going to happen anytime soon. More than half of the money going in to create that pension is coming from the employer, because I know part of the argument has been, but I've been taxed on it. Well, on your bit, yes, but not on the employer's bit. 50%, I believe, of pensioners don't pay tax, so it's not going to improve their lives. And I believe that's where the pressure should be alleviated most. So I don't think there's a short-term solution to that particular issue, sir.
Thank you. David.
Thank you, Tommy. That's a good one. I've come across it quite a lot going around. 2 gentlemen in particular, one in St. Juan and one today, actually, again in St. Juan, both on pensions. They've got 2 pensions, the government pension and a pension from their work, both renting their accommodation, both struggling. And it seems to be fairly iniquitous that we're taxing people on monies that they've already been taxed on. And I'm not sure it's correct that we should be doing that. But I'm not a tax expert. If they were, every state's member was a tax expert, we'd all be asleep in the first 5 minutes. But the thing is that it is meritable to look at it, because it does seem wrong, doesn't it? But again, of course, we need tax income. But to tax people who've already paid money on that tax, on that income, is just, I think, rather wrong.
Thank you.
And 5,300 have signed a petition to look at it, so we do have to do that.
Arlene.
I'm going to give a very short answer, and I do believe that we should look at raising the threshold on the amount that is paid on pensions. So.
Okay, Helen.
Thank you very much for the question. This is certainly something that's coming up a lot as I go round on the doorstep. A number of issues here. One is If the state pension is your only income, you're likely to be below the tax threshold, so you're not likely to be paying tax. So in fact, those affected by this are predominantly those who also have an element of private pension provision. If we were to simply stop taxing pensioners on the state pension, that would cost £20 million in reduced tax revenue. It isn't clear where that £20 million would come from. As a party, we have said we will help pensioners by a pensioners' increase in the tax threshold. I think support above that would need to be targeted at those who most need it, such as those who have high outgoings because they're living in private rented accommodation in particular. So I hope I can offer a partial solution in terms of an increased tax allowance and support for those with the greatest need.
Thank you. Russell.
I would raise the threshold at which people start paying tax on their pension, thereby taking those who can least afford it out of that tax bracket.
Very brief. Thank you, Russell. And Lucy.
Thank you. It's a very good question, and yes, my priority is to make sure that people who've worked hard all their lives and contributed and saved for later life are treated fairly and are able to live comfortably as well. That means things like pensions going up with inflation and making sure that there are protections there for those who are on the lowest incomes. There did used to be a higher tax threshold for pensioners, and as others have said, that is something I would support seeing a return to, so that we can bring more people into that bracket and start paying tax later. I couldn't support at this stage removing all of the tax, which I think, as Helen pointed out, I think the figure that's previously been put on it is £21 million. I would have a real concern that that 21 million would be put onto other taxpayers and in other places, and I think we've got to be very careful about where that ends up on working age population as well. So to me it's about fairness, looking at the system as a whole, but certainly I would support a higher threshold for pensioners.
Thank you, and thank you to all the candidates for all their answers. Thanks also to all of you for turning out tonight, and thanks to the tech team who've been keeping us all online, and the parish team for their support, and to Nikki for handing the microphone round wherever you are, Nikki. Thank you for doing that. If you'd like to get in touch with any of the election candidates, either the ones here tonight or others in your area, you can find their contact details on the vote.je website or in the manifesto booklet that has been delivered to you all. If you applied for a postal vote, your ballot papers need to be with the judicial greffe by 12 noon on June the 7th. You can vote early now at St Paul's Centre in St Helier from Monday to Friday until Monday, the 1st of June. And on election day, polling stations are open from 8 till 8. And please do remember your photo ID. I think David has a few words to say before we finish.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, before you rush out into the cool, I know you're eager to do, can I please thank the Conitable and the parish for welcoming us tonight. The Conitable doesn't seem to be here, actually, but thank you, Richard, anyway. To the press and the tech team, thank you very much for recording this so that people at home and we again can look at it at another time. Nikki, thank you very much for running around. As I said, we need to keep everyone being fit, so you've certainly started well this evening. Kathy Kerr, thank you so much for chairing the meeting excellently. It's lovely to have a good chairman who knows what they're doing. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you to you for turning up tonight on this very hot evening. Sorry you didn't bring your young people with you. But thank you ever so much. It's been a great evening. We've all enjoyed it. And thanks to my fellow candidates. We're a friendly bunch and it's great.
Good night.